Standing in at 6 feet 10 inches, 23-year-old Ben Simmons is yet another young player who is one of the league's all-around best, who has way too many pros for you to consider him not elite, but at the same time he has one gaping flaw in his game that is wide open: the fact that he chooses not to shoot from outside of 15 feet from the basket. But before I really kind of get into what makes Ben Simmons, of course, I'm going to give you a little bit of background into just the kind of player Ben Simmons is and kind of the narrative that follows Ben Simmons. So most people that know Ben Simmons know that he's from Melbourne, Australia. After kind of solidifying himself as one of the America's top high school prospects when he transferred to Montverde Academy in Florida and was the best young high schooler in the game. He was able to play with his father-in-law, who was on the coaching staff for LSU. So he ended up playing and committing and just playing one season, trying to go the one-and-done route, going to LSU, of course, with offers from basically anywhere. He was the top prospect in his 2015 class, and a very, very, very strong class as well, including players like Brandon Ingram. It was just those players. So he would go to LSU, and in the one season he played, he averaged 19 points, almost 12 rebounds and 5 assists with 2 steals, while starting in 32 of the 33 total games that he played. He was named a consensus All-American. Of course, he was on the SEC first team All-SEC, SEC All-Freshman team. He was the SEC Rookie of the Year. That's how dominant he was. There wasn't much question as to why he would eventually go on to be the number 1 pick in the draft, despite the LSU Tigers not making the tournament that year. Everyone was very certain that this was a player that if you had him on your team, he could make your team that much better. So, following his 1 year, of course, and by this time he was already high school national player of the year, McDonald's All-American, SEC Freshman of the Year, named by some. He's a consensus first team All-American, almost unanimous. He would go to be drafted first overall in the 2016 NBA draft. But of course, in his first season, he wasn't able to play because he got hurt, and he was, after receiving an X-ray on his foot, after rolling his right ankle during their training camp scrimmage, they found out that he suffered a fracture on his right foot. He was expected to miss 3 to 4 months, so he ended up missing the whole season. So it was basically kind of a lost season, which is why the next year, when he was competing with Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum for the Rookie of the Year, because that was officially his first season playing in the NBA. So in his first season in the NBA, of course, Ben Simmons averaged 15.8 points, 8.1 rebounds, and 8.2 assists, a very rare feat to get as a rookie, and did this while starting and playing in 81 basketball games. But that's the player that he was. His second year, he would go on to average 17 points, 8.8 rebounds, 7.8 assists, and he was picked to be an All-Star in the East in only his second year in the NBA. And this current season, at 23 years old, in the 54 games that he started and played, he's averaging 16.7 points, 7.8 rebounds, 8.2 assists, and a league-leading 2.1 steals. And of course, he's like I said, he's on his way to being, of course, at least a first-team All-Defensive player, probably a second-team, third-team All-NBA. But of course, but Ben Simmons, that's what he's really been doing for this Sixers franchise. He hasn't really done much to on the scoring front. Even this year, he's still shooting 58% from the field. He's shooting 33% from 3, but I mean, he took and made 1 3 and 3 shots. He's also shooting 63% from the free throw line. So that's a kind of that just gives you an idea as to the numbers. But if you look at Ben Simmons and watch him play, you see that he looks like how he looks like he may be the closest thing that we've seen to Magic Johnson in his ability to lead and run an offense for as big as he is. He's 6'10", and he's one of the league's top point guards. He has the size, speed, the basketball IQ. I mean, he has everything. He has everything kind of working for him, and he has the full, complete trust of the Sixers organization. The Sixers have been able to put young shooting pieces around him, and they've been able to pair him up with Joel Embiid, who can kind of show up and kind of put in the work when he's needed to as well. And since he's been playing for the Philadelphia 76ers, Ben Simmons he's been a big reason why why they've made the playoffs. For his first season, they lost in the Eastern Conference semis. Same in his second year and he lost in his second year to Kawhi, who would end up winning the title. And they lost, and this season, I mean, they're currently slated to be a 6th seed in the East, even though they had the best home record in the NBA, but they had the worst away record of all the playoff teams. But I mean, a lot of what I'm saying is just to show that he's a player that simply chooses not to shoot, but he's still one of the league's best, and he still earned a $73 million extension. I mean, he earned all of that money despite only having made one career three in his 3-year career. That just shows just how amazing of a talent. Just alluding on what I said before, even like offensively and defensively, Ben Simmons is one of the most complete two-way players in basketball. I mean, he has better handles, than most of the NBA, the better handles, I would say. I'd say he's a top 5 passer in the NBA very easily. I mean, he can move through the floor. He can slash. He has a solid post game because he's 6'10", and most players can't guard him because they're either point guards or either too small, or they're just not fast enough and can't keep up with his movement. And I mean, that's just the offensive player he is. And I think he understands that if he had a jump shot, he would be a top 5 player in the NBA right now at 23 years old. And also on defense, he is one of the league's best. Like I said, he's leading the league in steals. And if you watch him play, you see the defensive presence he brings. And I think that if he had been guarding Kawhi on that last shot, when Kawhi helped win the Eastern Conference semis, I don't think he would have made it. I think because Ben Simmons is a lockdown defender, and he's an amazing court. He has an amazing court presence on the offensive end. And I guess the best thing about watching his career is that he is only 23. He has a lot of great years ahead of him, and I know that he's only going to get better. The question is to whether he stays in Philly. His current situation with Joel Embiid, I don't think both of them work together. I think this might end up in a Kobe Shaq situation where the Sixers are going to have to choose one and build around him. And I think they should build around Ben Simmons instead of Joel Embiid, because I think Ben Simmons, at least you can just put shooters around him, and you can expect him to get the job done because he's able to do it on the offensive and defensive level, and I think he's more impactful than Joel Embiid. I understand why they would, and if they pick Joel Embiid, I'd understand too. I think that if Ben Simmons wants to stay in Philly, I think they have to break the bank for him because he's definitely worth the money. I mean, he has this much influence in the NBA, and he still chooses not to shoot, but people still recognize him as a player of that caliber, which is why I easily consider him an elite basketball player. But I mean, even with the hypotheticals, you never really know where he could go next. I think that the Sixers will do a little bit more damage in the playoffs than anyone suspects they would. Of course, I don't think they're going to win now. I don't know if they win with Ben Simmons as their best player, but I think if they build the right team, Ben Simmons could possibly be the best player on a championship team, which is why I consider him elite cream of the crop. He helps the offense run around him. He gets everyone else involved. He just needs the right set of teammates around him to help him achieve that goal. But I don't know if Philly can help him do that. Brett Brown's been a good coach for the Sixers, so it's a matter of time. We have to see how this Sixers team grows. After all, this is Ben Simmons' 3rd year in the league. We have to see if there's going to be some improvement. But I guess another good thing about him only being 21 is that he's very, very young, and we can see at least the rest of the peak of his career for a very, very long time. So Ben Simmons is going to be a very, very fun NBA player to watch while he's in it. He's just to give you just like just as a kind of summary, he's been the top player in his grade. He's been the top basketball player in the world his age, from Australia to Montverde Academy at Florida to the NBA. And I think that I think that he's a player that really needs to work on one skill. And once he gets to that, I feel like if he could shoot competently, if he could shoot to the level of a Kawhi Leonard, I think he'd be a very unstoppable basketball player. But and I won't ignore the positives to his game and just focus on the negative, because he has way too many positives to not be considered an elite basketball player on the offensive and the defensive end. But that's why I really like Ben Simmons. He's a very, very fun player to watch. You get a chance. Plays for the 76ers. But yeah, he's a very, very good young player. And I mean, he wears 25. And I mean, they'll play like the Boston Celtics. They'll play the Bucks. They're gonna be in the playoffs, so I'd recommend watching Ben Simmons and the 76ers in the playoffs, because Ben Simmons is a player that can help shape the outcome of of a game, and in a series of plays, or even if it comes down to one play. Ben Simmons is very, very smart. His IQ is on a completely different level in the NBA from a lot of other elite NBA players. But yeah, of course, there's that one glaring hole in his game, but he's too well-rounded for me to not consider him elite. Thank you once again for listening to all 11, 12 minutes of this. I appreciate you just taking the time to listen to this. And just to answer my question, is Ben Simmons elite? Yes, Ben Simmons is very elite. I don't know. At this point, if you don't think Ben Simmons is elite, I don't know. I don't know what to say to you. He's a really good player. And with that, I'm gonna sign off by saying peace.